So after it was decided that we needed to move on from Zolota, there was again kind of further discussion around and what would be the next thing to try. At this time, I had gone back to Boston to see my oncologist there. I knew that everybody was counseling with each other and talking to each other on both sides the country here, but I needed to decide we needed to decide what was going to be the next step. In this period of time that I was on Zolota, and as you do, you continue to learn more and more about your diagnosis and what possibilities are. I had a friend local, in Seattle that was on a trial for I can't remember, that's the Destiny Breast 01 potentially. It was for Enhertu. For her disease happened to be liver mets. She'd been on this trial for, at that point, maybe 3.5 years. No evidence of disease, just doing really well. And it got me really thinking about, the conversation about, for HER2, being HER2 negative, really didn't mean anything to me until I started talking to her and understanding what is IHC testing, what is the FISH testing, and it was a lot. It was another whole learning curve for me. But I began to read back in my pathology reports, trying to figure out, well, what's my IHC testing? I know I'm HER2 negative, but now that my friend is on this trial and she's IHC 2+, she's doing really well. I want to know what my situation is. Whether or not I didn't know at the time I would be a candidate for a trial or not. I found this pathology information and I was really ecstatic to see that I was 2+. Like anything, just because that I have the same, some of the same, factors as somebody else, it doesn't mean the drug's going to work, but it was at least something positive that I could start to look into. So I was really excited to see this 2+ on my report, whether at the time, in my head, 2+ is better than 1+, 1+ is better than 0. So I'm thinking 2+, this is great, great is, probably a little extreme, but I did feel some hope from that. I talked to Dr. Lin about Enhertu, and at this point, it was still a trial. It was still, and I'm not quite sure, again, with this progressing brain mets versus stable brain mets, it wasn't really offered as, we weren't really sure where we were going to go with that, but I think it was really close to the time that Dr. Lin thought that this was going to get approved for HER2 low disease. HER2 low disease meaning 1+ or 2+ on the IHC, testing system. And I can't remember the exact timing, but had just had a really outstanding amount of data presented on Enhertu for HER2 low disease at a recent conference, and at ASCO, I believe. And so I was holding out hope for this for a long time, actually through the whole Zolota process. I was really thinking this would be my next go-to drug. And luckily, that was what was decided. And I also have a PIK3CA mutation. So there was some talk about PIK3, and the side effect profile, that is pretty hard. Not that Enhertu is not, because I think it also came with its own set of side effects. But, I tend to be someone, especially after a year of not feeling like anything was working, I wanted the drug that people were, just giving a standing ovation for. I want that drug, and so I started Enhertu in July, and I had my first infusion. I think it was a Tuesday or a Wednesday. I had a 20-hour race to run that weekend. How am I going to tolerate this? I don't know. I was loaded up with all kinds of anti-nausea medication, and did not know what to expect. But I was really hopeful for this drug. I ended up tolerating the side effects pretty well. The first couple round, it's every 3 weeks. It was back to an IV infusion, which was a little bit hard to take. It was hard to consider going back to going into the treatment center. You're not getting to just take a pill at home. It definitely brought a sense of reality back into your everyday life with cancer. But I was still just really, more than anything, hopeful for this drug. I also, after just having early stage disease, I was really big on not losing my hair, and what can I do about that? I took there wasn't really any data to show that cold capping would work with Enhertu, but I decided to do that as well. And whether or not I'd lose my hair or not, some do, some don't on Enhertu. I opted to take the extra security and do the cold capping. So I torture myself with that every 3 weeks. But at this point, I have figured out how to deal with the nausea and constipation are the biggest side effects of Enhertu. I've figured out ways around that. I've now been on Enhertu for 6 months, and I've had a series of MRIs, which have shown I've had 3 MRIs and stable disease. And so there's no new metastatic disease showing in my body, my bones, or in my brain. So I have had up to this point, this is my 3rd treatment, or my 3rd systemic treatment, 4 rounds of SRS, and stable scans for 6 months. So, and at this point, we just keep going forward. Because of the interstitial lung disease worry with Enhertu, we have to be extra cautious. I get scanned every 10 weeks. So it comes up very quickly, but I am really happy to report that I've been doing really well in tolerating this drug. So here's to a little stability and catching your breath.